Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Wharton. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be to build a business without the right mindset. This is a podcast for those of us who struggle with showing up in our business with confidence and authenticity, who resist taking big action because of fears and doubts, who know deep down that it's possible to create something bigger, and yet you're not. This podcast combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business more easily in a way that feels aligned. This podcast features solo shows with me and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world, including my monthly co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey. My goal is to help you grow your business more quickly and easily by transforming your mindset. For me, mindset work is a lifelong practice, and I want to help you make a habit out of mindset work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 231. This is the last podcast episode of the year, and this is my last interview for a really long time. Haven't mentioned this to you yet, but I'm changing up the format of the podcast a little bit for 2018. And of course, this is always subject to change because this podcast is kind of an experiment, even though it's an experiment that's been going on for 4.5 years now. So what my plan is for 2018 is to have, as I've been doing, 2 solo episodes a month, 1 co-hosted episode with Joe Casey. And because I've been loving my co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey so much, I'm going to be bringing on a quarterly guest co-host who I'll be having 4 throughout the year, for 3 special episodes where we talk about business and business mindset stuff. I'm really, really excited about this, and I look forward to introducing the first co-host later on in January. And it's someone that you should probably recognize from the show because she's been a guest a couple of times already. So I look forward to doing more of a co-hosted episode format rather than interview. I will continue to do interviews, but as videos. So as I said, this is an experiment. We'll see how it works, but I'm really, really excited about this. I love the interviews, and I also love that idea of having a deep conversation with someone on a business topic that I know is useful for people. So we shall see how this goes. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this last interview of the year and last podcast interview for a while. This is a very special episode also because you may remember that I had put out a call for a guest listener to come on the show and talk about her business. So here we are with Louisa Whitney, who is a family mediator. She helps couples who separate to make arrangements regarding their children and money and property. She facilitates discussion and helps to give people the tools to manage their separation in a constructive way and to map out what happens for everyone involved. She is also a professional practicing consultant, which means she supervises and helps develop other family mediators to develop their own experience, training, and skills. In addition to her own consultees, Louisa also offers training to other mediators, lawyers, and counselors. Now, I love this interview and I love Louisa's story because she started out as a lawyer and ended up pivoting in her business to become a mediator. I love this because I hear so many entrepreneurs talking about how their business isn't quite right, they've fallen out of love with it, it's not what they expected, and some people give up and go back and find another job. And that's fine, and that's the right path for some people. But I think there's a lot of value in looking at how we can pivot and maybe stay in the same arena of work, help people in a different way, but with similar issues. So Louisa's story is really, really useful in showing how she's helping a similar group of people, but in a very, very different way that feels so much more aligned to her. This episode is also really interesting because she has put together a really unique network of professionals who are collaborating to provide really unique packages to help clients in a variety of ways. So she's got lawyers, she's got her as a mediator, she's got counselors, she's got financial planners. She's got different professionals who offer all the things that people need when they are separating as a family. So I would like you to think, as you're listening to this episode and hearing Louisa's story, how you could perhaps create something similar in your industry or with your business. Because I think there's a lot of value in business owners coming together to support each other, but not just through referrals, through creating something really structured, like this really unique network of package that she's put together. I love the way she's done it, and you'll hear all the details in just a few minutes. So I hope you enjoy this very special interview with Louisa Whitney. Enjoy. Hello, Louisa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, Holly.
I'm really excited to talk to you today.
I'm really excited too. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yay. Okay. All right. So this is a special interview for many reasons. First of all, because it's my last interview on this podcast for a long time, because I'm changing up the format for the podcast in 2018. So I'm really excited that you're my last person. And also because you're also a listener of the podcast. So you responded to my request to get listeners on the show. So thank you for that. So I wanted to start out by asking you, how has the podcast helped you, and how's it helped your business? Like, what have you gotten out of it?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I think the things I've got out of it are, one, on a practical level, that sometimes, I don't know, someone who talks about something and you think, oh yeah, I could incorporate that into my business. Or sometimes you've kind of known there's a block around something, but you know what it is, and you listen to the podcast and suddenly you'll say something, or someone you've interviewed will say something, and you think, oh, wow. I mean, the episode particularly on money blocks was like, oh my goodness, yes. And that kind of thing. But also, I think one of the things I really get from the podcast is really making me focus on incorporating me and like my soul journey into my work, and making that much more of a, okay, well, somebody else might run my business differently, but this is about me and how do I do it, and tapping into that. And I think that's been a game changer as far as I'm concerned.
That's actually really useful to hear, because I think one of the things that I very strongly believe in is that there's no blueprint that works for everyone. Like, you've got to find what works for you and what works for your business, and you've got to make all this stuff uniquely yours. And so I'm glad that's coming across, because that's something that's really, really important for me. I do not believe that there's one blueprint or template that works for everyone.
I think that's true. And I think kind of the early parts of my business were really punctuated by me kind of looking at what other people were doing and going, oh my goodness, should I be doing that? Should I be doing that? Or like going to a networking meeting and someone would stand up and say, well, if you haven't got this in business, your business is basically ruined. And it's taken me a while to realise that actually, do you know what? Your business might be ruined if you're not doing that, but mine's okay.
Exactly. And I think on one hand, it can be useful in the beginning to look at what other people are doing, but then it can also be really dangerous for the reasons that you just said.
Yeah, totally.
So you mentioned the episode on money mindset. What are some of your favorite episodes of the show?
Well, hang on, let me look. I've written them down because I love so many of them. And I was like, okay, I need to focus in on which ones have actually worked well. The fear of overwhelm was a big thing for me, because I think if you run your own business and you pretty much are your business, then I think the fear of overwhelm is a big one, because it's not like it's kind of, oh, well, that's somebody else's job. You are everything you're doing. And I think that's a big thing. But I think it links in with boundaries, which you talked about recently as well. And there's such a big play there that actually, if you've got strong boundaries, you are less likely to go to the overwhelm side of things.
That's so true. And I think boundaries are something that a lot of people really struggle with, because it's, again, hard to get clear on what you want, what you don't want, and then standing up for those boundaries.
It is. And I think when you run your own business, you have that kind of fear of, well, if I don't say yes to this, what happens if I never get any work ever again? And I think it's a really big thing to know. And there's a trust element there as well, that if you have boundaries, things will still come.
Yes. And trusting yourself, trusting
your own judgment.
Yeah, exactly. That what decisions you make are going to be right for you. So moving on to mindset, how has thinking about your mindset and working on your mindset and just focusing on mindset, how has that helped your business and your life?
I think one of the big shifts for me is when you get a kind of, I can't do that in your head. Before, I might have just kind of moved on and been like, oh, okay, I can't do that. But now it's like, whoa. What is that I can't? Let's focus in on that there. Why do you think you can't? And one of the big things is that there's nowhere to hide with your own business. When I worked in an office and we had someone else do the accounts and someone else do marketing, and now if something goes wrong, it's me. I've got to sort it out. So if there's something that I'm saying to myself, I can't do that, I need to know why, and I need to know what I can do to make sure I can do that.
Exactly. And I think so many people take their beliefs as facts, like, I can't do this, rather than saying, okay, is that an actual fact? Is that reality, or is that just a figment of my mind?
Totally.
And if it is something that's in your mind, a belief, you can shift that.
Yeah, my whole life, I've always thought I am not a runner. I can't run. And I did the Couch to 5K app a couple of years ago. And you know what? I'm not a brilliant runner, but I can actually run now. And I see parallels with that and what I do in my business, that if you give people the right tools, they can actually do anything.
Exactly. And the right tools and the right plan and a way to kind of take baby steps until you can start running towards your goals. I think that's an excellent analogy, because you just got to take action towards what you want and practice and implement and practice, and then you get there.
Yeah, I think your baby steps is a really good point, because if you try and go from step 1 to step 10, you're going to set yourself up for a massive problem. But if you go from step 1 to a little bit before step 2 and take it forward, there's a journey there and you'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you try to go from couch to marathon instead of couch to 5K, you might be disappointed. You might need to put some milestones in there before you get to the marathon.
Absolutely.
So let's take a shift over to your business, because I absolutely love what you do and I love the way that you do it. So can you tell us a little about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today with your business?
Okay, so from the age of about 12, I really wanted to be a lawyer. That was always in my head. And I did all that, went to university, did all the academic routes, became a lawyer, mainly because I wanted to help people and I wanted to right wrongs. But towards the end of the time that I was working as a lawyer, I really felt that I wasn't necessarily doing good. I felt quite frustrated with the systems in which I had to work. And then I qualified as a family mediator. So instead of representing people that were separating or having issues following a separation, I actually sat down with both people in a room to help them work out how they move forward. And that was just huge for me. It just felt like I was suddenly doing something way more constructive, and it just felt much better in myself. And after doing that for about a year or so, I made the decision to quit my job and set up my own business working only as a family mediator, which is what I've been doing for 4.5 years now.
Wow, I love that. I love how you work within the same field, but it's like you pivoted. You were working as a lawyer. That was what you'd always wanted, but it wasn't quite what you really wanted. So you did some additional training and just kind of pivoted a little bit into doing similar work with kind of probably the same people, but in a very different manner.
Yeah, completely. If I look back, honestly, I'm not sure I ever totally fitted in with the lawyer thing. Like when you used to go to conferences or meetings, I was always slightly on the outside of people. And being a mediator just felt like much more me, who I was. And I love the fact that I sit with both people, because you only ever get one side of the story and there's always two. But this way I get to hear both sides of the story and to say to people, you know what, there is always two sides to every story. And what I do is draw a line under what's happened before and help people talk about what happens next.
And was there ever a point before you trained as a mediator that you thought, legal thing isn't for me, I'm going to give it up? Or did you always realize that there was a new way forward within the same industry?
I don't think I ever thought about giving it up. I think there were points where I just felt a bit frustrated. But shortly before I did my mediation qualification, I'd kind of been on 2 periods of maternity leave. So there was sort of something else going on in my life. And I think there was probably a bubbling thing in the background that maybe this wasn't working. But I was a bit kind of like, do you know what, I've got enough to think about at the moment. And it was the mediation training that just changed everything, because it helped me to see there was a whole new way of doing things.
So did you have any fears as you were shifting into this new world of mediation, or any blocks about your ability to do it, or just completely flow and feel natural for you?
I think setting it up felt completely natural. I think the blocks came after I'd done it, when I suddenly was a bit like, wow, running your own business is harder than I thought, because there's just nowhere to hide. It's just you. If I'm honest, I think I was probably quite naive about running my own business. I just thought, oh, the work will come and it'll be fine. And I've been extremely lucky. Work has just come, but there's been points where probably not as much has come as I've wanted. And I have thought, oh, goodness, have I done the right thing? And one of the things that I've really been on a journey doing, running my own business, is picking into those kind of I can't things. What are they? Why are they? To expand and to do well in my business, but also because I think it brings an authenticity to working with clients, knowing what it's like to hit a wall of something and to have to work past that. And drawing on that experience helps me to deal with people who are hitting their own walls in a different way.
I like that. So was there a tipping point in your business where things kind of went from that uphill struggle to just kind of flowing?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it was sort of a combination of partly having really started to dig into the mindset things. I don't park things anymore as that's not for me. I work through it. And sometimes things aren't for me, but I get to the point where I know I can do them before I will say that they're not me. And I think that has really helped. I also think there's kind of, you have to put the groundwork in of getting yourself noticed. And I didn't work in the area that my business is set in Dorking beforehand. So there's always a period of kind of trying to make people aware of what you do. I also think in what I do, there's been kind of governmental changes which push people towards mediation. And I think people are a lot more savvy now. I think when people separate, they're much more inclined to look around and see what works for them. And that's definitely helped my business as well.
So do you have mostly a local business then, meeting face-to-face with people, or do you also work online with clients?
I do, but at the moment I only work meeting people face to face, but online mediation is a growing field in my area, and it's something that I'm looking at introducing in 2018 because I think there's people who don't live in the same place. I mean, I was contacted by someone who lived up north recently and the other parent lived down south and they wanted to talk about children matters. It's impractical to make people meet up halfway to go to a mediation session, so I want to offer online mediation to give people who can't make face-to-face meetings the opportunity to actually be able to come into mediation.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense because in a split up, sometimes people move away.
Yeah, completely. Or sometimes there's other reasons, working patterns. Sometimes parents work opposite shift patterns in order to be there for children, and you really don't want to have to use your precious annual leave entitlement to have to sort out things. You really want to save that for fun stuff.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you're splitting up, you probably want to spend it with the kids to make sure that they're okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, online mediation is definitely going to be a new thing in 2018.
So one thing I wanted to talk with you about was you've created a really unique collaboration with other professionals in your area. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have helped put together a group called Surrey Divorce Solutions, and that is different professionals. So we have counsellors, mediators, lawyers, financial planner, all working together under one umbrella. And the idea is that clients can then access all of our services through the same umbrella. All of our services are offered for fixed fees, so you know exactly how much it's going to cost you at the start. And it means that you're not just rooted in with one professional that you've met. It enables you to actually move between professionals, because sometimes when you've separated from someone, you might start off needing some counselling just to enable you to actually be in a place where you can make decisions. And then you can start to talk about things in mediation. Then you may discover that you've got big pension issues and you might need a financial planner to talk that through with you. And one of the problems, I think, when people separate is that sometimes they need different professionals to help them, but you worry because you've already made a relationship with one person. Do you really want to have to talk to another person? What about the cost if you're going to include other people? So the idea was to address that and to set up a group of people that work together collaboratively to best help clients who separate to get the best possible outcomes.
So how does this work then? Do you have different packages, or how do people put together the services that they need?
What we do is we have 3 different packages, which gives you 3 levels of help depending on how many mediation meetings you think you might need or how much support from a lawyer you think you might need. And you can choose the package that feels right for you, but you can also add in extras to it. So kind of in the same way when you buy a car, you can add on sat-nav or that kind of thing. You can then add in optional extras based on what you need, and everything is transparent, fixed fees. So it's not like you suddenly discover at the end it's twice as much as you thought it would be.
Ooh, I like that, because I can imagine that different people's situations are very, very unique and very, very different. So it sounds like it's easy for them to create the package that they need or that they want, and then add on extras if they see that they need extra things in the future.
Exactly, because I mean, some people separate and are able to talk to each other. They just need a bit of input in how to sort out the last few things. Other people are finding it really difficult to talk to each other at all, and they're going to need a bit more help.
And how has it changed the way you work with people to know that these clients have additional support in these other areas?
The whole thing started because I did a presentation to lots of other professionals basically saying, look, I think we should work more closely together. I think that would give people better outcomes. And the talk started as a kind of, essentially it was a marketing exercise to try and get to know people, but it was also something that I believed in. And what happened was at the end, everyone said, well, yeah, this is brilliant. How can we make this happen? This is exactly what we should be doing. So from one thing I've got from that is confidence that ideas that I have and things that I talk about in my line of work are things that people actually believe in and want to see. And working together with other professionals is just fantastic because my background is very much law and practicalities of sorting things out. Mm-hmm. But what I've learned along the way is so many kind of things about human dynamics, about how the brain works when you feel anxious, and stuff like that really informs what I do. Because when you're in mediation trying to have a conversation, if you are in like your fight or flight response or you're feeling really anxious, your rational brain does not turn on. So you can't have those conversations. And those are things that I've learned from working with therapists and counsellors. And I could name 50 things that I've learned from people that helps my work that I've learned from other professionals.
And do you feel like your clients, that it's easier for you to work with clients now? They're getting the support, that they're not in that fight or flight mode?
I mean, one of the things that I always ask people in my initial meetings is what kind of extra support do you think you need? What kind of help? And sometimes they might say, well, yeah, I might see a counsellor, but it's that whole having to see another person. But if you've got it built into the package that they meet someone, they have already opened the door to that. So to carry it on is much easier than you give someone a business card and say, well, you need to speak to this person, but they don't know them. Yeah. It's really scary to pick up the phone, and having that introduction and opening that door, I think, makes it much more likely that someone will access help that they need.
And how long did it take you to put together this collaboration of professionals?
The best part of about 2.5 years before we got to the point where we were going to launch it, because it's not an easy thing to work with other professionals within such a close umbrella, because we all have different professional bodies and there's various different rules, and the Solicitors Regulatory Authority, which is the kind of rules for solicitors, has really strict rules on things. And obviously counsellors have quite a strong ethical code, which is really important. And we all had our businesses to run at the same time. So it's been quite the journey of working out how we could do it. But I think we were all united by the vision of this would be so good to be able to do that it kept us going, even through the kind of difficult conversations about, well, how are we going to do this?
And so were you just having regular meetings with these people to try to figure out how you're going to make it work, what boundaries, the guidelines, the rules and regulations?
Yeah, exactly that. We always used to meet over lunch so that we could have lunch, and we'd meet at my offices and I'd have the sandwiches out and the flip chart out, and we'd kind of run through things, find a way forward. Then we'd have an action plan and we'd go away and do our actions and work it out. And then when we felt like we'd either done that or we'd got stuck with something, we'd come back and have another meeting and then sort it out. And kind of the fabulous thing is that having gone from loads of ethical discussions, our meetings now are marketing. What are we doing to get this more widely known and get it out there and all those kind of things? So we are now Surrey Divorce Solutions. We have a website. We have things that people can actually look at. We can have clients, all those kind of things, rather than it being a theoretical concept like it was for quite a long time.
And did you ever feel at any point like, is this worth it? Are we going to be able to do it? Because this is such a unique solution, and that you didn't really have any examples of other people doing it to make sure that it worked.
Exactly. And there was no kind of blueprint that you could go, oh, this is the way you do it. Because although there are a couple of examples I can give of people doing it in the UK, no one is working in the same way we are. I mean, there's 8 or 9 different businesses involved in this. And there were moments where you think, oh, how are we going to be able to do this? And I think for me, because I'd been the one that had started it and started the conversation, there were blocks about leadership and how can I move this forward and those kind of things. And what's great is the way that everyone supported me and said, this is brilliant. Thank you for taking us along. And I think everybody has just been committed to the idea of how good that will be. And that's seen us through.
If our listeners are inspired by what you've said, and they're interested in perhaps creating their own kind of collaboration or network of professionals, how would you recommend they get started with that?
I think like I did, basically inviting everyone to come to a meeting and saying, look, these are my ideas. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And opening the floor up. I think that that's a really great way to get started. It doesn't have to be in person. It can always be online. But if you don't start the conversation with people, you'll never know whether they feel the same way.
And then what would you say is kind of a way forward from that? So once you've got people who are interested, do you just set up regular meetings with people as you did, or what would you suggest people do?
I definitely think you've got to make sure that you are regularly touching base with people, because you need to make sure that everybody is on board with the vision of what you're trying to achieve, and everyone knows what they're going to do. So I think regular kind of making sure that you're all in contact with each other. I also think clear action plans are essential, so you know exactly what the next steps are and who's doing what.
Was this a challenge for you, making sure that everyone kind of did their action plan, or was everyone so excited about this that they were on track with things?
Yeah, I mean, it was at points, because it's hard to be the person that kind of pushes things along, because you've kind of got to check in with people and say, well, have you done this? How's this going with that? But you don't want to be the person that's always on at people, the person that's always sending the emails going, hi, you're supposed to do this, you haven't. And I found that quite hard, striking that balance between being kind of motivational of let's keep this going, but not being that person that you just think, oh no, it's another email from her, that kind of thing.
Excellent. So do you have any other last tips on how people can create a collaboration like this?
I think what I would say to people is don't be afraid to start a conversation about it, because sometimes you have ideas in your head and you never know whether there's other people feeling the same way. So definitely, even if people say, actually, no, that's not my thing, if you don't start a conversation, you don't know. And just because you start it with one person and they're not necessarily on board, it doesn't mean that other people might not be. But I would say don't start it lightly. If there's something you really want to achieve with a group of people, you've really got to know that you have the capacity to be able to do that and to see it through, because it is a project. And if you're going to be the person that starts it, you're probably going to end up being the leader of it. And the kind of manager.
Exactly. And that's going to trigger all of your leadership issues that you might have.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely.
So be aware of that.
Yes, definitely. Good tip.
So tell us more about your business. How can our listeners work with you if perhaps they're in a situation where they need mediation?
Okay, so my business is called LKW Family Mediation, and the website is lkwfamilymediation.co.uk, and there is a whole wealth of things on that website that I've added to. There's blogs, I've done video blogs talking about things, explains some of the questions that people ask and talking about mediation. It also tells you how to get in touch with me, and that is a good place to start if you're separating from people, because I have information about things to think about. It also has links to other websites or other sources of information that may be helpful. The Surrey Divorce Solutions website is also quite useful. That's surreydivorcesolutions.co.uk, and that sort of has links to all the social media as well, where you can get I like to post updates and links to articles that people may find helpful, all those kind of things.
And how do you find to be the most useful ways of marketing your business? Because you have such a unique offering that people don't always need mediation. They only need it at certain points in their life. So do you just try to stay top of mind for people, encourage word of mouth? What works for you?
It's a really, really interesting point, because I think it's anybody that works with people that separate will say marketing is a challenge, because when you talk about outlining your target group, you're targeting people that have separated, which is obviously not everybody. So for my marketing, I tend to target quite referrers. I get a lot of work referred to me by other professionals. And in terms of kind of clients, I tend to try and make sure I've got really useful stuff out on social media, that my website comes up quite high on Google, those kind of things, so that if anybody is looking, that's how they can find me.
And referrals are something we've talked about in the past on the podcast, but I think this is something that a lot of people find really challenging. Because a lot of people are afraid to ask for the favor, to ask for the business, to ask for help. What do you find to be most useful or successful in getting referrals from other professionals?
I find that if I come into contact with another professional who I may be able to refer work to, they may be able to refer work to me, I tend to try and meet them for coffee, just to kind of start to get to know them, to talk about whether we might be able to help them. I think it's really important that any referral relationship is a two-way street, because if people are referring work to you, they want to know that they're going to get a benefit from it too. And sometimes you meet people and it won't work because you're on a different page. And that's okay. You're just not meant to work together. But I've made some great relationships with people, and I tend to try and make sure that I check in with people that refer me work every couple of months. Just how are you? How's everything? I buy everyone Christmas presents that refers me work because I just love buying Christmas presents anyway. So that works quite well for me. And I just think it's valuing referrer relationships if you have them.
Yes. And I think one of the things that people also find challenging is how do you remember to stay in touch with these people? Do you use a CRM? How do you set up reminders to keep those relationships going?
Because I use Google Calendar and I put reminders in my calendar that you haven't recently seen that person, drop them a line. And I have to diarise it because much as I'd love to think I'm good at remembering, I cannot remember everything.
I think that's a really good point because so many things are going on in our businesses. And if you work with a number of referral partners, it can be really difficult to remember when did you last see so-and-so, when did you last speak, when did you last get in touch. So I think that's a really, really good solution to stay in touch with people because otherwise it's just so easy to let those relationships slip away.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I think it's really, really interesting to listen to how you've put together this collaborative group, this network of professionals that I think is really, really unique. And I also love to hear your story of how you made that change in your business from lawyer to mediator and how that made such a huge difference for you.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. It's lovely to share notes with other people and people's different journeys.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I love about this podcast is hearing other people's journeys because everyone has such a different path to business and how they built their business and how perhaps they left a job and started their business. And so it's really useful to hear what all the different journeys look like because they can help us realize that there are other options for us.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the podcast too. I always love hearing people's stories and journeys and yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/231 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for the topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and learn more about business mindset, join my private community for entrepreneurs at hollywharton.com/group. That will redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you so much.